and welcome to the latest edition of the Gutsy podcast, where we focus on the inflammatory bowel disease world with real people and real stories, always looking to inspire, always looking to empower. And I am delighted to have a good friend of mine, long-standing friend, and also a massive inspiration to the Crohn's warriors of the world, the one and only Rick Parfitt Jr. Rick, how are we?
I'm good, mate. Actually, I'm absolutely knackered. I'm so sorry. Sorry to start on a downer. I've been, for those of you who know, I'm in a little bit of a band, and we've done 3 nights on the trot, and I've had less than 8 hours sleep. So excuse my husky tones today, dude.
Oh, I'm sure that some of the guys watching might enjoy that, Rick, to be honest with you. So a little bit of background on our Rick. He's a Crohn's warrior. But he's so much more than that. If we look at it, he's just touched on his rock stardom.
No, not really.
And well, I don't know about that. Yeah, you're doing 100 gigs a year, my friend, and that is highly knackering. Yeah, but you know, everything from the Isle of Wight festival.
Yeah, we're opening Isle of Wight next week.
And I knew you were up here. Was it last week, the week before? Was it Lochfine?
Yeah, we headlined Fine Fest. We're doing Main Stage Camp Festival, Main Stage Car Fest. Oh God, there's loads of others as well. You know, so it's probably our biggest year as a band. I just kind of wish it had happened 20 years ago. I'm getting old, and you know, I've got a newfound respect for my father. That's for sure. Because I remember years ago seeing him really knackered after gigs and stuff, and I was like, what are you talking about? You just gone on stage and done like an hour and a half. I mean, it's the easiest job in the world. What's wrong with you? Yeah, I get it now.
Reality's a bit different, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But not only that, but a bit of a superstar in the old MotorGP in your time as well.
No, we're not MotorGP, that's bikes, but
sorry.
In motor racing,
let's start that bit again, because that shows my I've got it written down as well. Sorry. So also a bit of a superstar in motor racing.
Oh well, you know.
Yeah,
you do your best. 11 years of going around in circles.
My wife says that is me anyway. You know, just going around in circles. So let's a quick look. GT4 first position.
Yeah, I won GT4 championship and
GT3.
Yeah,
I believe the only person to do both. Is that still the case?
Still the only person to have won both outright, which is kind of cool, really, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, 27 podiums in that time.
Was it? I didn't know. Oh, is that right?
I'll keep you right.
These are good stats, actually.
Eight pole positions.
All right. Oh God, should have been more, really, shouldn't it? You know.
Yeah, but when you look at that, which when I was kind of doing a little bit of research,
right.
To have those stats, those podium finishes, and those first and a third in there with 8 poles.
Yeah. To be fair, 2016 we should have won it, you know, but that was the first year in the Bentley, and we were sort of my teammate was we were both a little bit green, and we made a couple of mistakes. So finishing third was a great result, but we should have won that as well. But hey, you know, hindsight.
So a man of many talents to say
average at most.
The extreme modesty to say the least. Just kind of going back to the kind of start of your journey with inflammatory bowel disease, Rick.
Yeah.
When did your symptoms come about? You know, what age? Because I know you were quite young, if my memory serves me right.
I think I was diagnosed at 9, but I was really struggling. And I think the common thing is to be misdiagnosed a lot. You know, like it's a tummy cramp, or he's got a bad tummy, or whatever. Especially when you're a kid, you know. And I was in boarding school, so you know, the matrons at the time. I know it sounds terribly posh, but you know, it wasn't my choice. My dad had done all right in music, and it was probably best that I was at boarding school rather than seeing what was going on at home, to be honest with you. So that was the thing. So, but you know, I was really struggling, and it was getting worse. Like I loved sport, like everything was sport. I wasn't a great academic, so to speak, but I loved everything about sport. And so I think my competitive nature has kind of always been there since I was a kid. I always wanted to win whatever I was doing. And, but I'd have to run off the football field, you know, in the middle of a game to go to the loo. And I remember, you know, just and being in pain and going, I've got to get back. And I'd always try and push through the pain and stuff and leg it back on and always just mask it, because the will to just compete and do stuff was always more than that. But it was only when I was in Germany, it was, with my grandparents, that I got taken to this university hospital in Göttingen, and they said, this is Crohn's disease, I think they described it in German, it's Morbus Crohn. And so that's what they were saying over there. And so, yeah, that was it. And then I went back to school and I was on a concoction of like 5 pills a day. And I had a little pill bag around my neck, and I had one of those digital watches with 5 alarms. And so that was my life for many years, just popping pills every day. And then, of course, as it got worse and worse and worse, through most of my sort of teenage years, when I was growing up, Crohn's was a major factor, and it was basically, I was really unwell, and what I don't think people discuss a lot about it is the psychological side that comes with Crohn's as well. Yeah. So obviously, I didn't want to go to many parties or things like that, or when you're just, because you're just in that age group where you want to be dating girls and you want to go to parties and you're growing your character socially as well as becoming an adult. And but I was really thin and really ill, and I didn't want to go to parties because what happens if I couldn't get to the bathroom, of course, or anything like that. And so this impacts on your confidence as a young person, and your social ability and everything else. And I became very insular and more and more depressed as well. And so it was just one of those things that you suffer as a byproduct of living with Crohn's.
I think when you look at that, and when you kind of touch on it for a lot of the people watching the Gutsy podcast, you've kind of hit on a kind of key factor here. Those formative years, you're becoming a young man. As you quite rightly say, you're getting interested in girls. You're very image conscious, but you're living with with this new condition, in your life. That's you've lost a bit of weight. You've been seriously ill. You're popping pills to help you navigate life.
I was dressing like an onion. To sort of make myself try and look normal. I'd wear like 3 t-shirts, then I'd wear like a polo neck, and then a jumper and stuff like that, and then a jacket. I was trying everything to try and look a bit normal, because, at school, I'm sure other people who've been on this podcast, I've heard of, like, mentioned it, it is, kids are intrinsically cruel, and if they see a weakness, they'll go for it. And of course, I was this ill kid who was very thin, and of course being a little bit sensitive and about stuff like that, and the fact that I had a famous father meant that I was a target.
Yeah, you were hit.
So
and that at boarding school, I think if guys that go to a regular school, they can you can get away. They can get away.
Yeah, you couldn't get.
You're not getting away for anything if you're at boarding school.
I went home once every 2 weekends, and so. Which, when you're sent to boarding school at the age of 6, trust me, I don't think it's the coolest thing. I mean, I wouldn't do that to my kids. I don't have kids yet, but even if I did, I don't think I'd send them. If they wanted to go at 13 when they were being like annoying and they really didn't want to hang around, that's fine by me then. But at that stage, I think it was a bit too early. And of course, there was a lot of emotional stuff that was going on, and I truly believe that probably contributed to. Me being unwell. Mom and dad were splitting up, and it was all in the press and everything else. And of course I was in this school, but it's very difficult to be isolated from it. And, everyone's commenting on it. And so, you just become more and more insular and more down. And then of course the symptoms get worse, and it's all a self-perpetuating thing.
Yeah. I think, you're speaking to so many patients and family units. There's that stress level that really can be a real key factor in the condition that can really push that on. So for a young guy going through that, and certainly a family, certainly in a major spotlight, to kind of live with the spotlight, and then your diagnosis and everything that goes along with that.
It's just but as with most Crohn's sufferers, I think we all put a brave face on and just and get through it, you know, because you don't have a choice. And everyone, all this thing about, you know, you're really brave and you're all that, and you know, and I don't get that. It's like it's what life has dealt you, and if you know, you've just got to make the best of what you can. And there are moments where it is hard and tough, and that's where having a good circle around you, I think, is important. And I always had some really good friends, and which stood by me, and they were my sort of source of strength, I think, in those times. You know, people of your own age who you get on really well, who understand. And it was a small circle, you know, and because, you know, I was intrinsically unsociable because I just didn't, you know, I couldn't hang with the cool kids, you know. So but having this cool like bunch of friends, and also I always found like finding things that you really enjoyed doing. Like when I was a kid, I played a lot of tennis, and so I joined a tennis club, and that little circle brought me socially out. And oddly, later in life, through my late teens, that's how I found motorsport, is because you know, I always loved cars, you know, from when I was a kid, and motorsport and everything, and I always followed Formula One and everything else. And so I used to spend all my pocket money going go-kart racing. And the reason why is because, you know, I could put a suit on and a helmet, and it was like this shield, because and I'd start winning, you know, and I won so many times at my local kart circuit that they banned me, and that people people were turning up on the open night tournaments and saying, if he's racing, we're not paying and we're not doing it. So I got banned from turning up, because I think I had like over 60 trophies from these plastic, you know, it was called Spitfire karting in Feltham.
Is it still there?
I don't think it is now. I think it's been bulldozed now, but it was a school of hard knocks. There were some hard lads in there. So
is it your fault it's not there anymore? You put everybody off.
I'd really quite like to take that credit, but no, that definitely was the case. But for me, it was something that it gave me a sense of, because I was achieving something, even though it didn't mean anything. Obviously, it was just but it meant something to you,
but it sounds like the driving and the competing and the winning, it almost became like a superpower.
Well, also I could hide, because I've got a helmet on and I've got a suit on, so people wouldn't actually comment on, oh, there's that rock star's son, or he's ill, or look how thin he is. You know, that none of that came into it. There was who's this kid? He's quick. You know. And so I got banned, and I went into, and so I joined their outdoor like pro team, you know, that raced in the British Championships. And then I found I was quicker than them as well. And then I found I borrowed a little bit of money off friends and used my student loan to buy a go-kart, and we raced as my own team. And then I got spotted by a manufacturer. And I was a works driver for 7 years in go-karts, you know, so I raced essentially for free, which was great. But I was still struggling with Crohn's. But, you know, there was one time we were doing this 24-hour kart race at Silverstone, and I was in so much pain, and the adrenaline covers it, you know, to a certain extent. But when I got to the end of the stint, we're doing like an hour and a half, 2-hour stints, and I remember I had to be lifted out of the kart, you know, after my stint. I was like, we have radios, and I was like, I can't get out. I just can't. And they lifted me out, and so that was the beginning of a recurring theme within motorsport. You know,
I can only imagine. One of the things you kind of touched on that we hear time and time again is identity, because you know you're going through your formative years, and you know everything that goes along with that, and then you've got your diagnosis, so it becomes increasingly difficult to identify who you are as an individual. And it's only you know from what we hear later on, for many, that they accept that their inflammatory bowel disease is part of them, and not just something that's kind of added on. It becomes part of who they are. But when you're going through that journey, it's like you're trying to find yourself as a young man. You've got this, and it's like that, to try to kind of identify who you are as a person. It's something that we hear. There's a moment, it's quite isolating.
There's a moment where you sort of go, why me? You know, and which I'm sure everyone thinks. And then, you know, with all the other pressures and everything that comes with, unfortunately, being associated with someone well known, you know, you've got all these other things you're trying to deal with. I mean, I remember someone said, which I think was a good saying, it said, kids of rock stars are always the most well balanced because they've got a chip on both shoulders. And I think that's an extremely accurate thing. But it took me a long time to be what you just said, to actually be happy. And I think there's a lot of environments where you've got to create the right environment around you. And as we sort of sped forwards, I was living this life in London, you know, where I was working every day, but then putting on this show. When I got better after my first major surgery when I was 21, and I started putting on weight and starting on like being normal, and you know, and you know, girls started taking interest, which was great. And then
of course I went,
no.
Look at that face.
And I went a bit nuts, to be honest, trying to make up for time. Yeah, let's be honest. And it was great. But the problem is, I started cultivating these two people, this was the public eye sort of person, which I thought everyone wanted me to be, this son of a rock star, you know, this party guy and all of that. But that isn't who I am at all. But I thought that was what was expected of me. And it was also fueled by the London world and everything else and all that circle.
Which is easy to get eaten up with, isn't it?
Very much so. Yeah. And yet I was leading this double life because I was working every day as well, you know, selling ads on for Haymarket Publishing, you know, on Autosport and Auto Car magazine. So I was still working my two passions, so to speak. And but, you know, that's also where the singing started as well. So I got invited. I've always written music and always that, but I've always been too scared to do stuff and never had the self-confidence. And this is another thing we can obviously touch on, right? Which is self-confidence is with Crohn's is pretty low because, and then couple with that, all the expectations you have being the son of somebody, you know, because if you do anything, especially when it's in the same industry, if you're good and if you achieve anything, it's only because of your dad. It's only because of your dad, right? That's it. Or your mum or whoever, you know. And if you're shit, excuse my language.
It's £5 fee in this sweary tin.
Okay. Or if you're rubbish, then if you're rubbish, you're rubbish. And that's just because you're rubbish, you know? You can't win. And I've had this in every facet of my life the whole way through is if I've achieved something, it's because of his dad. Right. And if I haven't, people are happy to just jump on it and have a go. The default setting for having opinion on anything I do, which is, you know, which is some people do, you know, is that, you know, they default to that, to the negative. And that isn't just me. I've seen that with anyone else who is siblings or, you know, sons or daughters of, and it's just human nature, unfortunately. But it's taken me a long time. I'm old now, so I'm completely cool with it now, you know, because I understand it a lot better. But when you're young, it really affects you, which then obviously causes anxiety and stress and everything else. And we didn't talk about mental stuff as much when I was younger. And that, it's yet again, will cause a flare up, you know, and then you go down and it's just a never ending spiral. Yeah. And so whilst I had this little crazy period when after the first big operation where I was gifted my life back, you know, and I thought, wow, okay, actually, you know, this could be all right. But saying that time when I was in hospital, it was my 21st birthday and I was 5.5 stone, ripped up, you know, all just with like blood everywhere. And I had a drain that was draining blood. And I remember waking up and in just so much pain and I couldn't move at all. And I was under a bit of a legend in the Crohn's world called Professor Herman Taylor, and who operated on me. And so I woke up and I was like, well, at least it's over now. And he went, it's not, you've had massive internal bleeding. We're going to have to go back in again. Which is just like the most gutting thing. And it was my 21st birthday and I had this like balloon and I just thought, is this it? And it's actually really visceral now. I'm getting emotional about it because, you know, all these thoughts enter your brain, like going, is this my life? Is this it? Right? I'm 21. Everyone else is setting the world alight, you know, and I'm just this. I'm just a husk of a person. I can't even move or walk, and I'm just in pain. And you know, and dark thoughts start entering your mind. And mum and dad weren't getting on at that time as well. And my dad in his infinite, insensitivity sometime, gave me a card for my birthday, which just simply said, at 21, Richard Branson had opened 10 stores at 21. And I literally just went, are you joking? I went, get out. And I just told, I just told everyone to get out. And I pulled the drapes around my bed, in the hospital. Well, I didn't. I got someone to do it. Obviously, I could hardly move, and I was just like, "This is it, innit? This." And it was just a very low moment in my life. And a little bit later on that day, a friend of mine called Sam sort of popped his head round. He said, "We've come to say hi," and I just said, "Look, I don't want to see anybody. I really can't." And he said, "No, the nurses said I've got to sit you up. And I've got to try and get you to stand up, and you've got to try and shuffle a little bit." And so I said, okay, so I'm sure everyone who's had the operation knows how, and it's a lot better now than it was then. We're talking quite a long time ago now. And so the recovery was a lot harder. And so I just managed to somehow, with the nurses, everyone to sort of stand up roughly. So I was shuffling like very slowly to the end of the ward, and we just came out. And all my friends from where I lived had all come to wish me a happy birthday. Nice and I'm still thinking about it now. And, I burst into tears because I didn't want anyone to see me like that.
Yeah.
And also, with everything that was going on, it was all a bit much. And, but I still very much remember that moment, and this is just, everyone has their stories, and with Crohn's, and it's all a different thing. But, that was very visceral to me. And, but the upshot was, for the first time in literally since I was a kid, when I got better, because they'd taken the worst of it out, it meant that I did have a few years of, relative normality in comparison to anything else, obviously. Yeah. And so, yeah, and then I went, a bit nuts and had fun, but
that's allowed.
But it came back. With a vengeance, unfortunately. One of
the things that kind of going way back, that, and even just to the story of your friends being there for your birthday in hospital, that's really quite striking and comes out as that you had shared what you were going through with a group of people, whether that be small at the beginning and then a few more as you were in hospital later on. There's so many people that are going through that journey who are very isolated and don't share that and feel that they can't share that. What advice would you give to them? Because it feels as if you get a lot out of that support network.
This is what I said earlier. You've got to find your tribe.
Yeah.
And so my tribe was motorsport in general. And so going back to what I was saying earlier on, I guess the advice I would give is everyone has a passion for something, could be art. It could be, in my case, it was motorsport, and music, obviously, and it could be anything. Sharing a passion with people takes it away from everything else because you've just got a shared passion. So motorsport, karting at the start gave me back my sense of self.
Yeah.
Because I would start racing. I'd go to race weekends with this bunch of people. We'd go to Le Mans and race at Le Mans. We'd do all this stuff together. And I wasn't being judged or anything. It was just, this was just our
You're shared, just Rick, who was very good at driving.
Then we just shared this shared passion, and so that brought my social ability back as well.
Yeah.
Because of course it didn't happen through, and that gave me a bit of social confidence as well. So my advice would always be, there's always there must be something that everyone loves. It could be anything.
Yeah.
But there are other people that also love that as well. Find that community and then chat. And then Crohn's will become into the conversation at some stage, but everyone is going through different things. But having a shared interest in something, whatever it may be, can find your community. And that worked for me, in the sense that it brought back, confidence, social ability, a sense of self, and a little bit of sense of purpose as well. And that was very important at that stage in my life,
So you got back that kind of, you got your health back, Mary. You were living
for a little while, for about 6 years, yeah.
And that 6 years, London's never been the same.
It was fun, but at the same time, it's like everyone has this crazy journey, and I had to sort of make up for all the lost time, in the sense of not just from going a bit nuts, but also finding out who I was as a person and where I wanted to go in life as well. Yeah. And as I said before, you know, having a famous dad is both a blessing and a hindrance. And I definitely found with what I wanted to do, it was a hindrance.
Yeah.
You know, it did open doors, but the doors would open, but with a massive caveat. And so oddly, you were sort of branded even before you were given a chance. And so, you know, I recorded a lot. I had big management deals. I was surrounded by a lot of sharks who just wanted to make money out of my name. And, you know, I was recording out in LA and staying at Tamara Beckwith's house and partying with Robbie and all this sort of stuff. But I hadn't stood on the stage, but everyone assumed that you could just manufacture something. Yeah. And also, even though I was acting out as if, you know, I was going to be the next big thing, it was acting because that's what I was being told to do and told what to say. And when that wasn't ever me, you know, and that wasn't who I was. I'm a massive geek basically, and I love the quiet life and a total nerd. And so trying to be something you're not is not the best way forward. And I mean, we fast forward to the time that I met my now wife, you know, and which was which was the first time ever I suddenly saw a future where I didn't have to put on a show or be anyone different. And someone who didn't give a monkeys about my family or anything, in fact, is possibly totally against it, comes from a completely different world that I was inhabiting, you know, and just believed in me as a person and in us as a team. And that's the moment where I realized, you know, I could actually just be myself and build a future based on, you know, being normal and being just me, and with someone who is immensely supportive by my side. And I feel very lucky that I found her, because there have been many situations in the last time with Dad passing and everything else where, you know, you feel like you're going to lose your head, and Crohn's, and all the way through when I was racing, especially when I was in British GT and stuff. You know, I was in so much pain. There was times I was rolling around on the floor of the motorhome, and the team manager come on, you're in the car in 5 minutes, and you just like pull yourself together and you just get through it. And the pain and the fatigue, and to have this constant source of support was, I mean, I'm emotional about it. I still think to this day, I am the luckiest man alive. Honestly, she's an incredible person. And without her, you know, I still would have struggled. Yeah. And so I'm very lucky to have found someone as special as that. But yeah, so it, like you say, going back to what we were saying, find your tribe, find the right person. And you know, Crohn's is a tough thing to deal with. It does affect relationships, of course, you know, and some people are weirded out by it, and because all the symptoms are embarrassing. Let's be honest, you know, the pain, the fatigue, the constant trips to the loo, you know, the passing wind, everything that comes with it. It's not easy for a partner, and I get that. But you know what? I've always said, if they can't deal with it, then they shouldn't be with you, you know. And
no, absolutely, because there's almost you know, listen.
And you know, I'm spinning my wedding ring whilst I'm saying it's good, isn't it? That's like a natural thing. Is it? There you go.
I noticed. There's almost like two strands of acceptance there. There's the acceptance of you because of your family background and the high profile and everything that goes along with that, and it's you as a person that's living with inflammatory bowel disease and everything that goes, that brings, you know, this one persona. Yeah. So it's like, and I think like for many people in your position, the wrong people are presented to them and they're there for the wrong reasons and things like that. And,
absolutely.
You know, and the fact that...
But it makes you very sensitive to finding the people who are there for the right reasons. And I think I definitely was surrounded by the wrong people for a long time. And but it was like a watershed moment, honestly, when you suddenly realize that you don't need that network anymore at all. And since that moment, life has been infinitely better.
Yeah. But would that be right in saying, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but you guys knew each other for a long time before you got together?
Yeah. Yeah. This is a But she knew me when I was this little party boy, and and quite rightly, she didn't want anything to do with that.
The darling
person.
of the London party scene.
And she didn't want anything to do with that. And she was absolutely rightly so. And she actually said to me once, she said, I could be so good for you, but you have no idea. And I was just like, whatever. She was right, of course. She's immensely right. But
as is always the case.
Yeah. I'm just so happy I came to the realization, let's be honest.
Yeah, good, but
anyway,
but
we digress.
No, not at all. It's really, really important. I think that find your tribe is massively important. Yeah. And I know that when speaking to the patients and the families that we work with on a day-to-day basis, you've got such a broad spectrum of attitude towards living with their inflammatory bowel disease. It's like, you've got one end of the spectrum, shut off, will not speak about it, and you've got the other side who are very, very open about it, and very proactive within the community and stuff like that. And it's almost as if you'd like a happy medium for the guys on the other side. But to hear that advice for someone who's lived through it for so many years is I think is really, really strong, important advice, and it's very similar to what other people on the podcast have given, because it's really brave of you guys to come and share your story.
Oh, come on. I said this earlier on. I don't think it's brave. I think it's just important to share the story, because I think Crohn's is and colitis, obviously, and all IBD things are quite insulating, because it's embarrassing. So no one wants to talk about it. So the more people do talk about it,
absolutely,
and the more they realize that they're not actually alone, and that there are similarities with all of us. We all share essentially the same journey, then that makes them feel not so excluded. And hopefully there's a little bit of confidence that can come from that. Absolutely. And they can, I've taken advice from others. I'm on Crohn's and colitis website. I see what others are going through as well. And, there are things where I'm going, is this? And then I see someone else is suffering the same way, and you're going, maybe it isn't just, like the fatigue and stuff, you think I'm just tired, but you don't realize that maybe it is to do with that, Yeah. And I mean, I am generally constantly tired anyway, to be honest. So, today is no different. But sometimes you go, well, how much is down to that? And how much is the fact that I just don't sleep, So
it's fair to say you're pretty
I think this month is probably down to the fact I'm just not sleeping very much. But, that's all good.
Oh, I mean, you've just got the Isle of Wight Festival in a couple of weeks. You'll be fine.
Yeah. It's not playing too long. We're only doing 45 minutes. That's fine. I'm barely getting going in 45 minutes.
No, this is true, because I've seen you quite a number of times, but I've seen what you guys did at Isle of Wight Festival the last time.
It was good, wasn't it? Yeah. That was a nice moment as well, because that was also the last stage my dad played in the UK before he passed away.
Oh, wow.
So it was a bit of an emotional moment to actually walk onto the same stage. And, and yet again, I was worried, because of course I'm not playing original stuff. I'm playing other people's stuff. But of course, what people don't realize about my band is it's made up of some of the best session players in the world. So they all play for big name artists. And I've always wanted to just bring a show. And what I've always worried is that people are going, oh, he's just trying to be famous, or he's just trying to. I'm absolutely not. We've been in corporate land for a long time, as you know, right? Yes. So my job was I wanted to make a living out of music. And years ago, the whole ethos of this band was the bands that play corporates, which were frowned upon, by the way, are either really, average wedding bands or famous people. So there was a big cost difference as well between the two. Course. And so I went, hang on a second, why isn't anyone bringing a massive, proper stadium rock show to corporates? Because everyone went, well, it won't work. You can't play those songs. You can't do that. And so I was like, no, you can, because music is all psychology. People just want to feel inclusive. It doesn't actually, I've always said, it doesn't matter what song you're playing. If people are invested and they're just having fun and enjoying it, you could play anything. It could be Nirvana, Metallica, or anything, and we play big IT conferences. Like we played for Cisco Live in Amsterdam. It's 7,000, mainly, I would say 98% guys, and IT people, like, and yet we're smashing out Rage Against the Machine, Metallica, and the place is going nuts, and And so it's always sort of worked. Where are we going with this? Where was I saying?
No, you're fine.
Yeah. So my point is that with regards to Isle of Wight, I was very nervous because I thought that people were going to sort of say, well, why is he only playing covers and stuff like that? I'm like, because our job, my niche, everyone was saying, well, do you not feel like you want to do your own stuff? And I was like, well, if I do, I'll do it under assuming no one's going to even know who it is. And I will be doing that. And I'm releasing stuff on Spotify, but I'm not going to say under what name it is because it's just got to go out there because I want to put stuff out there into the ether. You know, with regards to this, my job is to make people happy. And I have the best job in the world. This band does that. You know, we go out. It's not about us. It's actually about the audience. And that is what people are now beginning to see, you know. And I've always said, if my job is to be the best niche party rock band in the world, then I'm really happy with that.
I think you're doing not too bad a job at that, Rick.
It's going okay.
You're doing okay. But with all this energy that that's portrayed to the outside, you've got this energetic lifestyle. I know that you've done three gigs this past weekend, which is quite common for you. I know that you're gigging during the week quite often as well, you know, around the world. It's not, you know, they're not just local gigs.
No. It's dartboard touring, we call it. You know, it's just literally throw a dartboard and that's where we're next. It's all over the shop.
Because obviously
the travelling's the killer. And the lack of sleep is the killer. That obviously, again, we bring it back into the Crohn's. I've got to be really careful how I manage it, you know, and
see, that's a big challenge for me, just from the outside looking at you and where you're at, having a little bit of understanding of the music world and touring. I watch you and I'm going, how is he going to be okay? I worry.
I did. Looking at my next 2 weeks, I'm kind of thinking the same. But
how do you manage that?
Well, I'm lucky at the moment because I had my third resection in 2020, and I was really bad. And
that was a tough one. I remember.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I've all, you know, like with anything, I was always trying to push it away and push it away and push it away. And that my surgeon said, we need to go now because otherwise you're going to be in proper problems. Yeah. And when I said, oh yeah, but we can just, and he went, no, I mean, you're going to be in proper problems. And he went, we need to go now, i.e. next week, you know, that's the earliest I can get it done. And so I took that as he was being pretty serious at this stage.
Absolutely.
And I was in a bad way, to be fair. And
but you were still gigging.
I was, yeah. And my band boys will tell you, there's times when I've been literally on the floor of the dressing room. There was one gig that I played where I was in so much pain, and I told the organizer, I said, and he was very concerned, and he went on and said, it was actually a big charity event as well, which helped in a way, so they understood.
Yeah.
And I literally shuffled on and I didn't move from the mic, you know, and I just said, right, boys, we're going to have to do a Mariah Carey here. And by that, I mean that they're going to have to jump around to do lots because I'm not going to do anything. And I literally just stood and just kind of got through it. And but the response from everyone was amazing. I mean, it was... And then straight to hospital, you know, and
literally straight there.
Yeah, I was, and there was another time I remember once actually going back a few years. We're actually played up here. I played in Air, and I was really, really unwell, and I basically collapsed straight after stage, and I flew back, and I got picked up by my dad's then driver because I was just in a state, and he said, I'll get Andrew to come and pick you up. So. And straight to hospital, like literally straight. Still had my gig bag on me, straight to hospital. And this just is what it is. So, but since 2020, touch wood, you know, I've been, yet again, I'm having a moment of, I would say, relative remission, but I've been very careful this time to stay on the right medication, not like go, hey, I'm good, and then wait for it to come back and then try and get on top of it. Yeah. I'm trying to stay on top of it from day one now. Yeah,
it's been proactive rather than reactive, and I think that's another message that we hear so often. And I think there's so many that almost they want to fight and ignore their bodies. Absolutely. To a certain extent. And
which we all did.
Yeah, it'll be fine in a few days. It'll be fine. chances are it won't. And it's trying to be ahead of the curve. And it sounds as if that you've, over a number of years, got better at managing that and listening to your body.
No, it's just comes age. Age comes wisdom and realizing, when you feel good, don't take it for granted. Yeah. And because unfortunately, this is an illness which will recur. And it's just happened so many times with me that I've finally got to the realization that actually, I've got to actually try my best to give me the best possible chance of making this period last as long as I can. Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm perfectly well. Of course I'm not. Most, pretty much all my gut's gone. So I still have to go to the loo probably about 15 times a day. Yeah. And in the morning, if I eat, there's like 4 or 5 times before I can even leave the house. And this happens all the time. Like my whole life is predicated with analysing where the next loo is, which is just a common thing. And I've become very good at high streets. Right? All the coffee shops have loos. That's fine. If your hotels always have loos in the lobby. So I've done really well. If posh restaurants are really good to walk in on my phone going, yeah, where are you? Oh, yeah, I'll find you in a second. Yeah. As if I'm meeting someone. So I don't get the awkward question. Why do you want a table? No, I'm just meeting. No, it's fine. And I'll find the loo, And so I've got all these little tricks I've learned.
Rick Parfitt is free for consultations on how to find toilets at any point.
Yeah, absolutely. Looffinder.com. And so, that you have to just live with that. Like if the family are going to go and have a picnic or something, like in the summer or something like that, my first thought is, where are we going? Are there loos? Because if I eat something, I'm going to have to go to the loo.
Of course.
And so if it's by a lake, I'm going to have all of these things. And so, hey, listen, you can say, oh, wow, big deal. But, and you're right. I'm complaining too much because I'm very lucky that I'm in remission and a lot of people aren't. But, it won't last forever. We know that. So I'm just trying to make hay whilst the sun shines at the moment.
And absolutely. So you should, because you've got to, you know the bad times. You've been there, so you need to kind of cherish and make the most of these, but always have one eye on what the potential and look after yourself in that. And I think that self-management piece is quite challenging for a lot of people. It doesn't come naturally to many, and many learn it like yourself. And I think just listen to your kind of patients and kind of family units that we work with. Learning that self-management would really, really benefit a lot of them, and kind of
just realize your limitations and work. Everything can be worked around. I think it's acceptance, isn't it? Like you came back to what you said. Accept that Crohn's is a part of you, and adjust your life accordingly. It shouldn't stop you doing stuff. Like as I quite proudly would say that I've proven, I wanted to be able to play in a band still. I wanted to be able to, perhaps not in the big sort of upfront commercial world, but in the niche that I inhabit, we're right at the top of the game. And, as far as I'm concerned, I'm nearly 20 years into a music career, of paying my bills and doing everything just purely with music, and a bit of motorsport as well, obviously. But, and that, as Tom Petty said, when once said, what do you define as success? And he said, if you can pay the bills by doing something that you love, then that's successful.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like I'm immensely blessed and very lucky still to have found a route to do what I love, given my limitations as well, and still be relatively successful at it. But, this also makes me very lucky because, of course, I remember when I had my day job, for many years, the bosses wouldn't understand. They couldn't understand the fatigue. They couldn't understand the constant toilet breaks. And they would pick that up with HR and like you do the point scoring system or whatever it was. Yeah. And, I'd have to get, and they still, like years and years still, they'd still ask for doctors to approve it because they didn't believe that I would have this many sick days, and that was a constant battle. And I really sympathize with everyone, who has to go through a day job and deal with bosses. And that's why this is so important, because the more people talk about it, and it's great that Crohn's and colitis now people are a lot more aware of it. Bosses are a lot more aware of this. Go back, 20 years, they weren't, you know.
Definitely not.
And it was a real issue. And because it's a relatively invisible disease, as they say, it caused a lot of people to lose their jobs. And I find that immensely unfair, especially when I always used to bring up the fact that, hang on, all of that team are going out to have like 10 fag breaks, and smoke cigarettes. I'm going to the loo instead, right? You know, it's the same deal, guys, except I have to do mine. They don't have to do that,
No, I totally agree with you. And I think that employability and having education for employers and in the education system, because there's so many great positive stories of support within the workplace and education.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they're in the minority.
Yeah.
So it's about us as a charity, as a Gutsy podcast, getting out there and educating people what the needs of our community are rather, and hopefully with that education comes a little bit, or rather a lot more understanding, so that we can support, because because you're living with inflammatory bowel disease doesn't mean to say that you're not the top of your game in what you do. Well, no. You've proven that time and time again, and it's the same in so many different walks of life. It's just that little bit of understanding and management of it, management of that education, so that we can support these people to be the best that they can be, to fulfill their potential and as human beings and in life. And it's only through what we're doing today and getting that message out there that we can really educate people, and getting a programme of education into the workplace as well. Because you're right,
I think it's really important as well when people are getting diagnosed. GPs are wonderful, but they're GPs. You need to get to a good specialist. And when I say a good specialist, because of course the default route is prednisolone and azathioprine and pentasa and all of these. These are pretty archaic nowadays. The one good thing about Crohn's and colitis now is that the locker is a lot more full than it was 20 years ago. But but there are still people who just go, well, that's the approved route, go that route. You've got to get, I would say it's worth getting second opinions, making sure you can do all the tests. I know there are quite literally sometimes a pain in the ass, but
pardon the pun.
Sorry, it's true, isn't it? And but you've got to give yourself the best screening and information for the specialist to be able to act effectively. A blood test isn't just going to cut it. You need to do all the screenings, the horrible MRIs. I remember, God, there was this time in Germany when they were, at least you don't have to do the barium meals anymore, because oh my God, that was horrific. Have you?
Yeah,
well, when I was a kid, I was puking it up, and this doctor pushed my chin up and just went swallow. I was puking, and he's telling me to swallow, and
it was very Victorian of him.
It was properly Victorian, man. Terribly German. What can I say? And no, nothing. I love Germans.
Nothing against the Germans.
I love my family. It's all good. But I think he was just like, we got to get this done now. This kid is just refusing to ever swallow this stuff.
You will swallow it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Without the question. No, I didn't. No, he didn't do that. That would be wrong. Anyway. And so at least, things have progressed, and with the MRIs and everything else now, you can get really good screening. And so you just got to get yourself armed with as much information so that you can get the right treatment for you, because there are all the different MABs now as well, infliximab, Stelara, ustekinumab, and also, as recently has been reported, they've identified the faulty gene in the DNA, which is a massive step forward. But I do think we sort of knew about this for a little while, didn't we? But it's just how they now try and switch that little gene off, and without switching your entire immune system off. So I'm on Stelara, which means I have to inject once every 8 weeks. I've got to do blood tests every 6 weeks to make sure, because obviously my immune system is compromised as a result. But we're all right. But the whole point is for everybody is just to make sure that you're as informed as you can. Don't take the first thing. Get every push to get every test done you can, so that you can be properly informed with everything. You wouldn't buy something expensive if you didn't do all your research on it. You know, you wouldn't invest in something if you didn't do all your research in it. And it's exactly the same. Your body is your thing. You need to get every bit of info you can to present it to someone who can then make the best informed decision on which way is best to actually treat you. And that's the best bit of advice, you know, because just saying blanket Crohn's isn't blanket Crohn's. It's different for everybody. It affects you in different areas. As a result, you know, there are different ways of treating it, and what would be effective for one person might not be effective for another. So, sorry, I know I banged on about this a bit, but I think it's important that, you know, you get as much info as you can.
No, it's massively important, because people put more research into a holiday than they do their body, what's going in and out of it. And they also, I think a lot of people might disagree with me here, but there's almost an over reliance on the people that they're dealing with, the medical team. It's kind of, they go in with the opinion that they should just automatically fix that for them.
Yeah.
And that's wrong and for so many reasons. But also, I think we need to look at the individuals holistically, you know, as people, and not just as the condition. You know, what are there other factors in life that will benefit you? Mental
capacity, the capacity to control stress,
absolutely,
and be happy. It's like, you know, dopamine is good, you know, and just finding, like you said, it all comes back to what we were discussing. You know, it's important to create your world around you as best you possibly can, and whatever it takes to get to that point, you know, is everything, and that will ultimately also benefit you in a health spectrum as well.
Absolutely. So, Rick, I know we've talked pretty extensively about music and how that's been such an impact in your career, and how, you know, gig after gig and living with your Crohn's and how that's affected it. Now, I know that the motorsport's been such a massive part for you as well. You know, followed your career for many, many years, and everything that you do. I mean, you just exudes passion. You know,
that is actually the only way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, you know, you're all in. There's no doubt about that.
Whether I'm good at it or not, there's definitely passion there.
Yeah, you're very modest, I have to say. Now, I know that you achieved quite. You know, you obviously were at a very high level, to say the least, but you won an award, the BRDC award.
I won 2 actually.
You won 2? Oh,
yeah,
well, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry
So to say what this is, right? So there's this at Silverstone. If ever you've watched the Grand Prix and stuff, you'll see this big building which has BRDC, which is the British Racing Drivers Club. Now, this is like the most exclusive club in motorsport, and you can't get in. You know, you have to be invited. But to be invited, first of all, you need to have achieved a certain amount of wins, championships, etc., to even qualify. And when you qualify, you need to be firsted and seconded by members. And there's only 800 worldwide members. Right. You know, they'll include obviously all the Formula 1 boys. And then when you're firsted and seconded, then it goes to the board. The board then approve whether you get gazetted. Then it gets sent out to all the members. And even if one person writes in a letter, go, I don't think he's BRDC material, you know, you don't get in.
Wow.
And then it comes back to the board.
So when you said exclusive, that's really exclusive.
It really is. But because it's actually viewed as a bit of an honor.
Of course.
And you know, little old me, you know, I started racing like cars because I never had the money, you know, to get into car racing because it's prohibitively expensive.
Very much so.
And so Lawrence Tomlinson, a guy who owns Ginetta, the car company, you know, said, I'm going to put you in a car for a year because you did well in karts. And at my birthday, I think there was a lot of alcohol involved in those days. And I think he regretted that decision. But
I don't believe so.
But I got in a car and, you know, and I didn't really know what I'd be like in a race car. And it turned out I was all right. And I remember in only my second ever race on this big grid of Ginetta G40s with some really handy drivers, all who went on to win stuff, you know, in the wet. Because I come from karting, so I can chuck a car about, you know. Yeah. And in the wet, I passed everyone, and I was really good at chasing everyone. And then I got to the front, and I was just like,
What do you do now?
What do I do now? And of course, I got these guys going, the little bastards, he's going in front of this. Who is this rock star's kid who's come from nowhere, And I swear I was wearing glasses. My glasses were going all skew if I was steaming up, going, I don't know, I'm in front. I've got no one to chase anymore, And I promptly spun. And Lawrence came up to me after and he said, that's the best race I've ever seen right up to the moment that you spun, But I'd signaled my intent, and people started to take me a little bit seriously then. And so after that, I sort of begged, stole and borrowed from friends and family and got a few people to sponsor me. And I did a full season the next year and, did well and got 2-lap records and started to make a little bit of a mark. And then this is my career, by the way, in motorsport. I'll just run through it. And then I got invited to step up into the, then I went into GT4, which was a big car. And I remember getting in it and being pretty scared. These are big, shouty, fast things, and it was intimidating. But after a few, laps, you start to understand the car as big power, big brakes, big tires, big grip, and you start learning. And I just felt at home. And then I went on to win that championship in my first year with my teammate, which is a guy called Ryan Ratcliffe, which was quite a big achievement. And then I went on to defend the title in 2014, and the car broke down a lot, and so we ended up 4th, but we should have won it again. And if it weren't for the breakdowns, we probably would have won again, which was good. And then I got invited into the Ginetta factory GT3 squad. Now that car was atrocious; it just broke all the time, but it was quick. So I led the first time at Alton. I led all these factory teams in this plastic Ginetta. I took the lead and no one could believe it. It promptly broke, but we took the lead. And so that was my first time in GT3. Then I got a call from Team Parker Racing, who were the Bentley, work supported team. And I went in as their AM, and that was 2016. And we turned up at Brands Hatch, and everyone had written the car off because it was big. It was bulky. It wasn't like the Lamborghinis and the Porsches who were really honed. This car was a little bit unwieldy, and but I stuck it on pole, and everyone was like, "What?" And then Seb, my teammate, stuck it on pole, and we combined and got Bentley their first ever domestic pole ever. And there's a little video online. We're in tears. Rach is in tears. We can't believe it. Everyone is jumping around, and my dad came down that day as well on the race day, and I steamed off from pole, and I put like 10 seconds on everybody. Absolutely winning. And I thought, we've won it. And then there's a full course yellow, and someone jumped us in the bloody pits, which is annoying. It just happens like that. It's racing. But people were suddenly going, okay, this young lad Seb, who was this lunatic, he went on what was it? Celebs go dating after we won the championship.
Really?
We won't talk about that. Yeah, he's an annoyingly good-looking chap, and he's bloody fast in a race car as well. But he was a proper little playboy as well. He was everything you want a race driver to be, And so I was like his older brother. But so from that point forward, and then we won GT3 in 2017, and that was a massive moment. My dad had passed obviously in the previous year. Sadly. And so, there was so much going on. I was really ill. There was a lot going on in the press as well. There was a lot of pressure on me, from all sides. And this is where Rach came in. She was an absolute rock in that time. And my only constant in what seemed a very dark world. And so to win the 2017 championship for Bentley, still the only domestic championship they've won, and they won't ever do that again because they don't build GT3 cars anymore. So I'll still be the only person to have done that with me and Seb anyway.
Incredible.
It was an amazing moment, and I still think people look back on that. All the fans still look back as possibly one of the best titles because, we didn't have the best car. We really concentrated on what was the thing. Also, they know my personal struggles that I was going through, both mentally and physically.
Yeah.
And as a result of the end of the year, you know, I got a letter, which was surprising, that first of all, I'd qualified to be a BRDC member, which was just amazing, because now it means that even in all the years forward, you know, like at British Grand Prix and stuff, you have your little pass, and you all the queues on the inside, there's a lane on the inside
for the BDRC.
It's atrocious. I know, it's so elitist, it's rubbish, but you know, I'll take it.
Yeah, well, and you literally devastated.
You're just devastated, and you drive past everyone, and you just show, and everyone just opens the gates for you, and you drive straight into the middle of the circuit for any event that's at Silverstone, and it is amazing, because you're in. At the Grand Prix, there's two parts. There's the main building, and there's also the farm, which is right in the middle. And that's where all the F1 drivers have their campsites, and all the race drivers are there. So all these people I've revered, you know, and now I'm one. And then, to go one further, then at the end of the year awards, I got this letter from Derek Warwick, legend, the chairman, who was then chairman of the BRDC, saying, I'm really emotional about this, because it's funny how things mean a lot. But for me, this was massive validation, you know, for an achievement, you know, and for achieving what we'd achieved. But at the same time, from people who I respected and would just, I sold ads on Autosport magazine. I was reading about these guys, you know, I've been racing against them now, you know, and proving myself, my worth, you know, against these sort of people. And now I'm being recognized in the most prestigious way by being given two BRDC awards. And one was the John Cobb Memorial, which is outstanding achievement in a British car, you know, and the other one was the Innis Island, which is showing, I'm getting a bit emotional about it because it meant so much at that moment, where it was showing outstanding courage, you know, in whatever aspect. And that meant the most to me, because, you know, I'd had such a tough, you can hear I'm a bit, because I'd had because that year was so visceral for me, you know, the loss of Dad, the fact that I was in so much pain and fighting through the pain each time I got in a race car, as well as gigging as well. I was at my lowest ebb mentally and probably physically. Yeah. And yet we were still able to pull off something that was pretty amazing. And, you know, and to be, you know, honored in that way amongst all these amazing people, and this trophy that I'm now engraved on, you know, there's Sterling Moss, there's Jenson Button, there's David Coulthard, and then there's my name. It's mind-blowing, you know. And so, yeah, that meant a lot.
And so it should. And congratulations for that, because it's absolutely incredible what you've achieved. Because there's so much adversity in that journey, and you touched on earlier on having to be lifted at the car because there's no energy. That must have happened on a regular basis. Yeah,
there was at Silverstone.
2017.
Yeah, that was a tough race. I was in a bad way, and I remember going out, and it's a long lap around the. You do a rolling start in GTs, and I'd qualified second, you know, but I was racing against the guy on pole, was a pro, because I'm a bronze graded driver, you know, and there's silver and gold are pro drivers, and so. He was in the Aston, you know, we knew they had a power advantage over us, you know, but we knew that we were kinder on our tyres. But the whole way round, you're trying to put heat in the tyres, and the Bentley was never great at getting heat. You had to work it so hard. So I was the whole way around the circuit, and I'm literally in so much pain. I'm about to puke in my helmet. You know, I'm like, I can't deal this. And I came around the last corner, you know, and the team went, okay, your tyres in good shape, you know, and because they've got all the pit monitoring. It's like Formula One, you know, you've got all the monitors on the car and stuff. And I knew I couldn't fight this guy. I did not have the energy to fight him for my stint. And so we'd fueled me a little bit light, right? So we were gambling on a bit of a strategy. We wanted to give me a shorter first stint, you know, but also to give me the best chance to be able to fight against this guy. And I've never been so ready in my life for the light to go off. And I was off like a scolded cat, right? And I've always been good around Silverstone. And so I just got into the flow, and the adrenaline, of course, covers the pain. And And I put 9 seconds on this pro driver, which was mega. But we pitted after, I think it was like 25 minutes, when most people are fueling for about an hour. So that then put Seb out against a majority of the AMs and a couple of pros. So he then went out and obviously obliterated the bronze drivers, which put us about 30 seconds in. I went back out staggered, but held my own against the pros because I was not far off pro time. So we lost very little. So we sort of staticked. And then of course, the way we played it on a strategy level, if there'd been a yellow flag and we bunched up, our strategy was mullered, you know. But luckily there wasn't. He went out and we won it by over a minute. And
wow. That's a long time.
Trust me, in GTs, that is unheard of. And the other team owners came up and shook us by the hand and just went, that was a bit of genius, you know. And I was just bereft at the end, you know, just absolutely just beyond exhausted and beyond, you know, just in a bad way. And there's a picture where I'd climbed the fence, obviously, to sort of signal when we're coming around the last corner, because Seb had the last stint. And when we came and took the checkered, you know, there's a picture of me pointing up at the sky, you know, because that was for Dad, because the year before it was raining and I just had this memory of him just looking through, you know, the fencing, you know, giving me the thumbs up and stuff, and it all just sort of came flooding back. And that was a big moment, you know, and to win the Silverstone 500 is a big deal, you know, and then obviously we went on to win the championship, and it was, you know, I think we got a lot of respect for that because, you know, we put a really good championship together. We didn't have the most money. In fact, we probably had the least money on the grid, you know, in sponsorship. We had the most unwieldy car, but we made everything count, and we properly put it together. And then couple that with all the adversity, it was an amazing thing. And I'll cherish that memory for the rest of my life.
No, it's incredible to hear and hear you share it, well, you know, so well, but obviously with a fair degree of emotion, and you can see how much it means to you, and for such incredible reasons. What we do here at the Gutsy podcast, we always finish off with some quick fire questions.
Okie dokie.
Not to put you on the spot, but you'll be fine.
That's fine.
You'll be grand.
I think we've covered most of this.
I know.
What else can you throw at me?
I'm kind of looking at it going, covered that. Oh, I don't like him for this. No, all seriousness. Top 3 tips for living with inflammatory bowel disease.
Oh God, I should be quick fire. It's not very quick, is it? Realize that you have it, and take measures to make sure that you make the best of the situation and how you are in every situation, whether you're having a flare up or whether you're feeling well. So my best thing is inform yourself completely, make sure everything's right, and get on treatment. And, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions to your GP or your specialist. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Brilliant.
And be happy if you can. That's another good thing.
That's sound advice for anybody.
Try and find happiness.
Absolutely. Most frequently asked questions in relation to your IBD.
What is it?
Yeah.
You know, is what I get a lot, you know, and then of course, you know, there's no quick answer.
No.
There's no quick answer. So, yeah. Or the other thing I get asked about my IBD was that you? And it's usually related to passing wind. And to which the answer is frequently yes. And unfortunately, it happens a lot on stage where, unfortunately, everyone else can move around except my drummer, and he's right behind me, bless him. So, Alex, I officially apologise for the amount of times you've been absolutely gassed on stage, bless him.
At least we know what to get Alex for Christmas. 3 things that annoy you.
What about Crohn's?
Yeah. Apart from the obvious stuff.
When you come out of a disabled loo and people give you bad looks and make snidey comments, I'm not very good at reacting like that. I kind of react quite quite viciously to anyone who gives me a comment, or it's the tutting or the under the like that, that you get. That really, really riles me. But I like the fact nowadays that on most news they say not all disabilities are visible. Yeah. That is a major thing, and well done to whoever came up with actually making sure that most accessible loos now have that on, because that is the first thing I'll say. This young lady or young person, not all are visible, okay? And understand. And also people who don't have disabilities and are using those loos when we need to use them. Yeah. You totally. Can bugger right off, you lot. Anyway, there you go.
Exactly. There's so many things. There's so many stories associated with that, isn't there? I actually think it was a wee girl from round about Edinburgh who had the idea for that to make
really?
not disabled. I'm sure of it. And then the good people at Crohn's and Colitis UK really pushed the campaign, getting into supermarkets and stuff like that. And I was a little bit involved in that way back in the day when I was on the board there. But it's annoying me. If your young lady is
or young person, I'm only saying that because there was a particular moment which I always remember, and it was a young lady. I'm sure she feels much more informed now. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
I made sure she was pretty informed.
I couldn't imagine you being like that at all.
But that you said what's annoying, and I don't get annoyed that often. Although my wife says I'm grumpy a lot lately, but I think that's just down to age. I don't think that's got anything to do with Crohn's.
Definitely age. I'm in that bracket as well. 3 things you'd like to see for the future? Listen, like with anything else, that IBD could be eliminated as a thing, and I'd like to think that we're getting towards it. You just always worry that, as they say, good health doesn't make good money. And you just worry that how far will people take it? But that's like a bit of conspiracy theory, isn't it? Because if everyone was healthy, then there'd be no need for pharma companies, would there? So how much will they do to cure us? But I'd love to see movement forward, and if this DNA thing, so that people could actually be pre-diagnosed or realize that they have a susceptibility to certain diseases, not just IBD. Obviously, we're talking about Crohn's and colitis and everything else here, but it would be great if there would be a fact that people could be, through a simple blood test, to be able to recognize what the weaknesses are in their DNA chain, and they could be treated accordingly. I mean, that would be amazing. So I'd like to see that. As always, I'd like to see more less invasive ways of being able to identify that you can have Crohn's. But most of all, I think I'd like to see people being able to be diagnosed quicker and not misdiagnosed, because that just happens all the time. Even to this day, the GP will send you home saying you've got an upset tummy or you've got this. This should be at the forefront. If people are describing the certain ailments or coming up with symptoms, this should come into the mindset pretty much straight off the bat, and so I'd like to see that, and that's kind of it, really. And more public loos. Yeah, definitely.
Toilets everywhere.
Yeah, because they keep
especially at festivals.
Yeah, they shut them down, didn't they? A lot of the public toilets, which is...
What does everybody do? I've always wondered about this. Like, if you go anywhere, I've been looking into it. You can get boxed loos. Have you ever seen those? They're foldable, and you could just wherever you are. I mean, I've got an emergency pack. Well, I've got an emergency pack in the car, which is, I've got loo roll, I've got plastic bags, and a set of spare underwear, and I have that in the car the whole time, because there have been moments where I've literally pulled over on a lay-by, I'd been running across fields, trying to find a mildly secluded spot, so yeah, more loos.
Yeah, but in the meantime, strong advice to what to have in the car or in your bag.
Hey, listen, don't be, upset about it. And the other thing I'd say is, back to the advice: be upfront. People are only weirded out if you try and hide something. If they don't understand it. I've always been really upfront about all the ailments and all the, you know, the having to go to the loo, the pooing, everything else. And, you know, my band called the occasional gaseous things that happen. Like they call me, is that a Crohn's bomb? Have you just unleashed a Crohn's bomb? You know, I'm like, sorry to say, boys, yes, I have. You know, you might want to vacate the dressing room for 5 minutes. And so the more you can turn it into humor, and actually people are cool with it, you know, so that's the best thing. Don't be embarrassed about it. Be upfront about it. Tell people about it. If you're going to the pub, tell people about it. If they go, God, I've got Crohn's, I got to go to the loo right now. Tell them to get the hell. You know, be upfront about everything. Everyone will be really cool. It's only what you project is what people get. If you're awkward, people will be awkward with you about it. If you're confident and funny about it, they'll find it funny and be totally cool with it as well.
And I think that humour's a great way of kind of getting it across in that kind of self-deprecating way for a lot. And you know, there are some people that would maybe turn their nose up at that as an angle to do, but
quite literally in some instances, yeah.
Totally, pardon the pun. But I think it's such a great way of doing it, and I think you're absolutely right. You know, if you're weird about it, other people will be weird as well.
Yeah, no, there's no need now. It's in the public domain. What we have, and I'm surprised at the amount of people who understand what it is now when I say, and that's great. So this and everything you do, and everything the Catherine McEwan Foundation does, and Crohn's and colitis, and all of us Crohn's sufferers, everything that we're doing now is being recognised. People are seeing what's happening. It's not so hidden as it used to be.
Yeah.
It isn't as stigmatized as it used to be. It is socially very acceptable now. It's just a thing, man. You know, we've all got our things going on. It just so happens that us lot have to deal with Crohn's, you know? And so the world needs to be a little bit more understanding about that. And everyone just needs to be as happy as possible, as I keep on reminding.
Yeah,
that's all there is to it.
And last but certainly not least, 3 things that you are grateful for.
My wife, my band, and my current state of remission.
Fantastic. Rick Parfitt Jr., thank you so much for joining us on the Gutsy podcast. It is always an absolute pleasure to see you. An absolute inspiration, a really, really interesting life. And, you know, we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much.
Stay healthy, everyone.